So we talked a lot about basic timing of queues. So our fade and delay times within our queue list itself, which are the global times for those queues. We talked yesterday about parameter times, where we can split up the different attributes to be different fade times within a queue, making it kind of a multi-part queue. Another way we can control the timing of playback is with our programmer time fader and our executor time fader. And these are located right here in the bottom right corner of screen number 2. On the software version, that's where they are. On the console, let's see if I can pull it up. On the console, I guess they would also be virtual on the console. On the 3 console running 2 software, it would also be virtual. On the MA2 physical console, there would actually be a fader set here in the middle that you could deal with, but not on this one. So it's all virtual for us. But it's these 2 faders right here. And you'll see here, the right one is the executor time, the left one is programmer time. And then we have the 2 buttons on the side for each one. We can set the time, which is turning it on, and we have a manual crossfade option for this that we can use this as a crossfader, and we'll go through that. And then we have the slider bar, which is the amount of time that we're going to apply to these. So the way this works is these are for either side of the playback of a console. So executor time is going to deal with, let's go ahead and toggle on our executors on screen 4. It's going to deal with timing for executors, for sequences on an executor, okay? Programmer time is going to deal with the programmer side. So anything we're placing into or clearing out of the programmer. So let's just go through this and see how it works. We're going to grab fixture 503 through 511. And we're going to set the dimmer to full. So you add at. We're going to mix them into yellow, or actually we can use our color presets now. So go to your preset 1 view and select your yellow color preset that you made yesterday. And select your downstage center position preset. And let's go ahead and store this on the same page we were working on yesterday. So we're on page 4. We're going to store this to executor button 101. So not a fader this time, we're using executor button. So hit store, and then button 101 is this lonely button down here by itself. Just a 1 button executor below fader number 1. Excuse me. So that's kind of the first time we've used those executor buttons. They are separate from the faders themselves. And obviously we only have 1 button to control this and no fader associated with it. So if we were doing something on an executor button, that's the perfect time to use these executor time faders, because now that gives us sort of a fader option for these. So now we're going to, without clearing out the programmer, we're going to store a second queue. So we're going to tilt these fixtures towards front of house until they're way up in the truss. So let's go to our position tab for our encoders. Make sure you're in the find mode. It's going to help you out a little bit. And then we're going to click on the tilt encoder and drag it to the left until those fixtures are up in the truss. We will hit the store button and store that to the same executor button 101 as the second queue. So we'll select create second queue. Okay, we're done with that. We'll clear 3 times to clear the programmer. And now we're going to see how these act with the executor time fader. So if we go ahead and just turn this on using the go button, we click it once and we see that the lights turn on and move into position and have color as soon as possible, because we currently have a 0 fade time on these, which is the default. Hit go again, they move as fast as they can up to the second queue. So that's using the queue timing that would be in the queue list, that the basic fade time. With the executor time fader, it's going to override any of our basic queue times within the queues that we've set. So it's a global override sort of deal. So any executor that I manipulate or turn on or advance in queues, and if I have the executor time on at a certain time, it will override all of the queue times, fades, and then execute whatever time I place here. Okay. So just remember that that is a global thing. It's going to affect every executor if it is turned on. So let's go ahead and turn it on. I just want to show you real quick the queue list just so we can see. We do have 0 fade times here. So that is what the sequence is telling these queues to go in as their time. Let's go ahead and turn on the executor time fader. So to do that, we will hit the set time button and you'll see the red square light up telling me that this executor time fader is now active. And we're gonna drag the fader up until it reaches 4 seconds. It's a little bit touchy, so you can also just click on the executor time header here and type it in directly if you want to. And on the console, this would be virtual. So you'd be scrolling this either with the mouse, with the trackpad, or you can use your finger as a touch screen. Okay, so now what we've done here is we've turned this on and set it to 4 seconds. So any executor I now press go on or turn on is now going to ignore its queue timing and do everything in 4 seconds, which is what I have this set to. So let's go ahead and press the go button on Executor 101. And we'll see now, yes, we've applied 4 seconds to this queue and also the second queue. Okay. Now I told you it's a global thing. It is, but we can tell it to ignore the executor time fader. So if we go into the assign menu, so again, you can go and click the assign button and then touch on the executor, or just touch in the header of the executor, the black header, to get your assign menu options. And we've looked at this with how we change the buttons and what they do. And we notice we're on an executor button now, so we only have one, no fader. If we go to the options tab, these are all the options associated with these executors that we can change. And these are the defaults that are toggled on right now. So we have auto start and auto stop on, which is when it automatically turns on and off when we pull the fader off of 0 or send it back to 0. It is a tracking, so we could turn off tracking on queue lists if we wanted to. I don't recommend it. We talked about priorities yesterday, about LTP and HTP. So here your priority is default set to LTP, which was latest takes precedence. And I told you you could set specific priorities for each executor. So that's where you would do this here. If I wanted to change it to HTP, I could give it a high priority, a swap priority, super priority. I could do that here. And then over here under the protect section, we see off on overwritten. That's what we talked about yesterday. If all the values for an executor are overwritten by another one, it will turn itself off, and that's toggled on here. Above that, you see ignore executor time. So if I click that on and now play back this executor, it goes back to its basic queue time and it ignores the executor fader that I have on. So you can do that as well. If you have specific lists, if you want to use the executor time fader and you have specific executors you want to ignore that, you can set that in that assign menu. Okay. So that's the executor time section. We also have the manual crossfade here. So if I turn off set time and I turn on manual crossfade, what we will notice here is my executor down here is now flashing. I hope you can see it a little bit, but it's saying pull up, like you're in an airplane, pull up. That is because I have now enabled the manual crossfade. So it's waiting for me to pull this fader up. And the way that this works is that every time I go up, a complete movement up on the fader or a complete movement down on the fader, it advances to the next queue in the amount of time it takes me to drag that fader. So I can manually, it wanted me to pull it up first. Now I have to actually hit go. And if I hit go, you see that nothing happens. This is flashing right here, telling me it's waiting for me to pull the fader down. So if I pull the fader down, it goes at the speed that I go. If I don't make complete movement, like I just came down to 10%, it goes backwards, back up to 100. It does not release that, and it doesn't complete itself until I make a full complete movement of the fader. So 0 or 100. And now you'll see it stop flashing. If I hit go again, it will again wait for me, and I can pull this up as slowly as I want to. And once I complete the movement, it has completed that action, the go action, okay? So that's the difference between the two. Set time is just gonna be, when I hit go, it's gonna take that amount of time. Manual crossfade, it is waiting for me to pull the fader at whatever speed I want it to advance the cue, okay? So that's that. Let's go ahead and turn off the manual crossfade here. And also, we want to turn off that executor, so we're going to hit the off button. Since we don't have a fader here, we can't just pull the fader down, and we also don't have the off button up here. So we're actually going to hit the off key on the keypad and touch on the executor to turn it off. Okay, likewise, this is not in the tutorial, but I always like to go over it. We had that programmer time like I talked about, and that was controlling anything I'm placing into the programmer. So if I turn on set time for this, they work exactly the same way. Hit set time, and I'm gonna drag this up to like 4 seconds. So what that is doing is that it's overriding the programmer. So normally if I'm placing stuff in there, it's gonna be on a 0 count. It just does it as soon as I tell it to do it. With this, it's going to take this amount of time for that action to be placed into the programmer. So say I grab my quantum profiles now and I hit at for full. I have 4 seconds set on the programmer time, so I hit that. It takes 4 seconds for these to fade in. So you could use this to manually pull lights in and out in a slower method than just them snapping on and off. If you're in show and you're trying to get rid of something real quick and you don't want it to be noticeable, you could do that, because it also applies to the clear function. So say I've manually faded these lights in, and now I want to get rid of it. I still have the programmer time fader on, so when I hit clear 3 times, they also fade out in 4 seconds. Same thing with manual crossfade. If I had that on for programmer time and I told these lights to turn on at full, they're going to wait for me. They're not going to do it yet. And as I drag this fader up, they'll come on in whatever time I want it to. Okay, so it works the same way. One of these is the programmer side, one of these is the playback side. So those are super handy if you're doing live shows and you need to manipulate things on the fly. You can use these 2 faders. All right, turn that off. And I always like to pull these back down to 0 when I'm out using them, just so I don't make a mistake